Welcome everyone to another video, and in this video we are doing a best of 7 in the Timeless Cup against C9Gotem. I also did a very early, in this case day 0, best of 7 for the Ferocious Cup, so C9Gotem was gracious enough to allow us to do another best of 7. We're rocking a very similar team. The only difference is that he's running Houndoom versus I'm running Dragonair. So let's go ahead and get started. So my thoughts on the first match is that Victory Bell is actually pretty good against my team. It does run into a really pretty hard check in Venomoth, so I'm thinking he's gonna try to exploit Victory Bell against my team. So I decide to come. I'm like really debating on what to. I'm looking and debating and thinking like on what do I come with. I'm trying to think of can Kingdra take out Victory Bell. It's a kind of an iffy matchup, so I decided to go Venomoth there, and then we end up in the Lapras mirror match, which somehow I lose. I had to check the bulk points. I have a pretty not good Lapras for the one Skull Bash. I do have a rank 14 that I'll probably upgrade to, so I do get CMP, which is not going to make a difference if we end up both shielding, which ends up being the case. So defense rose, set shield, ends up being a Skull Bash, and now we're off to the races to the second Skull Bash. So you're gonna see a lot of Skull Bashes. So I win the race again. I win CMP twice in a row. I'm not sure how, and I land the Skull Bash. So in theory, if he hits me with a Skull Bash, which he doesn't, then I'm in a pretty decent position. So really, I should have potentially shielded this Skull Bash. I'm not sure, but for somehow I am behind in health by quite a bit. So I try to bait him, which was totally the wrong move. And anyways, so I think I'm like, okay, you know what? His only check to Dragonair in this lineup is his Lapras. That's okay if he faints down my Lapras because it has pretty crummy IVs compared to his, apparently. So yeah, nice. Okay, so I come Dragonair. I fainted down before I even get hit by Ice Shard, which is great for me. He comes in with Kingdra, and these Dragon Breaths are just doing a tremendous amount of damage. And I'm hoping to get the shield, but this actually works out a little bit better than me because it allows me to fade down the Kingdra. It allows me to hit a Aqua Tail here, but really doesn't matter because I have Venomoth in the back. And I try to switch, but it's useless switch with this new mechanic. So I'm going to shield. This is just going to be a Leaf Blade. I would have been able to survive the Leaf Blade, but better safe than sorry. Just going to be able to confusion down this Victory Bell side to take game number 1. All I have to do, really, what I need to do is get rid of the Lapras, and then my Dragonair is pretty free. So let's see how I decide to adapt and adjust. So that's probably the only time I'm going to run Venomoth, just because if Venomoth runs into Houndoom, I don't know if that's a Snarl or Firefang Houndoom. So I'm gonna try this double Dragon strat. Really, the key to this is to to hopefully land the mirror match with Lapras, and I end up getting into a matchup with Swampert. So Swampert can beat Lapras, but it needs to land the Earthquake. So if I end up shielding the Earthquake, then I'm gonna win the matchup, and he's aware of this as well. So he shields, and I debate, and I shield the Earthquake. So it's a pretty lucky guess on my side, and he does a really nice switch here. He must pull up the switch window for sure, and makes me hit his Lapras, and now we're off to the races again. And I win the CMP race, so that's great, good for me. And I hit the Skull Bash, do a lot of damage. I have a defense rise, and then we're about the same HP. So he hits me with a Skull Bash, so I'm slightly ahead, but his Lapras does have better IV, so I'm going to hit this Surf as soon as possible to try to get rid of this Lapras. And again, I win the CMP race. That's like 4 times in a row. He ends up shielding, or maybe I beat him too. I can't tell. But regardless, I'm in a pretty decent position because I do have Kingdra in the back. Kingdra's going to take neutral damage, and Kingdra with an energy advantage is super deadly. I know this is just going to be a serve, which I double resist. So it's not going to do very much damage at all. I do take a little bit of health away from the ice shards, but I'm in a pretty decent position right now. And comes in with Houndoom, and he's trying to. We end up in a CMP tie. So I let it go, and man, foul play almost KOs me. But I'm able to get it off just barely. I think I would have been able to survive like 2 more snarls, to be honest. And then I end up in a matchup with Dragonair versus Swampert, and this is not good for Swampert. Swampert ends up losing the 1 and the 2 shield matchup, I believe. These Dragon Breath damage is just so oppressive versus Swampert. I'm not even necessarily sure Swampert is the right answer as a starter. So many people are going to bring Swampert. Like, it might make sense to bring Venusaur, but, Victory Bell is, like, the ultimate scare tactic away from Swampert. So, anyways, I am going to, let's see. I'm going to lead Victory Bell. Right now, I'm up 2-0, feeling pretty good. I have gotten CMP a lot, so I did lose CMP that one time, and if it would have ended up being us like Swampert in the back, then it may have mattered, but in this case, it didn't. So we end up in the Victory Bell mirror match. So my Victory Bell is very good, so I feel pretty confident in any mirror match that I go up against, and I see that he hits the charge move like 1 turn before I get sludge bomb, so I know for sure it's just going to be a Leaf Blade. And he plays this pretty interesting, and I do a terrible job hitting these poison bubbles, but he ends up, and I'm like, okay, I'm in a terrible situation. What I'm going to do is I'm going to switch out into Dragonair, get an energy advantage. I'm going to tank this Leaf Blade because I resist it, and he comes in with Lapras. And this is okay for me, just because like Dragonair is doing so much damage to this Lapras. Look at this Lapras at the end of it trying to farm down. And I'm going to hit 1 more Aqua Tail. I probably, I don't know if I could, no, I definitely couldn't have squeezed out 1 more. So at this point in time, I'm like, okay, if I go into Victory Bell, I'm going to be able to land like 2 or 3, I'm going to be able to land at least 2 or 3 Razor Leafs, which is going to get his Lapras super low. So I do run the risk of his Lapras charging up way too quickly. I really should have hit that Surf sooner, to be honest, because he was definitely at risk of like surfing me or Skull Bashing or baiting, which would have been not good for me. He comes back with Victory Bell, but his Victory Bell is super low. So he comes in with Kingdra, and basically this is like a guessing game here. If I do land the Skull Bash, whether it's the first or second charge move that I win, and then he just guessed that I was going to bait first. So then it ended up working a little bit better for me, and he ended up fainting with a shield. So anyways, I'm up 3-0. Obviously, you can tell by the length of this video that I don't lose it. So I had some groceries delivered to me, but they were like really, really late, and I actually had forgot that they were even coming to me. So anyways, as I was battling one of the last matches, I was like balancing, like they were at my door knocking. I was trying to let them in through my phone call, let them in, and it was just super chaotic. You know that. So anyways, we're going to game number 4, and obviously this is best of 7, so you know what's going to happen this matchup, but still pretty interesting. Ended up being super, super close, so you're going to see in a little bit how that's going to play out. All right, Swampert into Lapras, and you need to land the Earthquake to win. So I'm like, it's just a guessing game at this point in time. If you land the Earthquake, you win. If you don't, then too bad. And I'm pretty sure he QSA'd me here, which leaves me not in a great situation. And he's definitely QSAing again. So I think he is, at least. I'm not sure. Anyways, I land the surf, and then he switches out to Victory Bell and deletes me before I can even do anything. So I'm like, all right, this is how I envision playing out the Dragonair matchup. You might disagree with me in the sense that now that I know his Lapras is still pretty high health, I'm just going to gain as much energy as possible. And then as soon as, in this case, his Kingdra came in, which is fine. Last Resort is the right move. Not Last Resort. Return is the correct move, not the Last Resort, but I kind of like the Last Resort, I guess, because I'm doing a couple more Dragon Breaths. Gets his Kingdra super low, and then I have Lapras in the back, and, it's debatable. Purely debatable. I could have hit the surf sooner, but I might end up in a CMP tie. If I do get a shield, if I do get the shield and we shield, then I win. But the thing is, if I lost this CMP here, because if I would have been able to hit the surf, actually no, it didn't really matter because he ended up shielding. So I do get the bait, and then I'm like, oh, I got it! I can't believe I won. That was such a miracle. And then you'll see here, survives with basically the equivalent of one ice shard. So I could have played that better. It's very difficult to count and determine when Kingdra is gonna get to a charge move. If I would have been able to surf and the Kingdra faints, then I have a shield, and then I'm up health, and I can probably double Skull Bash, to be honest, and end up winning still. So, but I didn't. So tactical error on my part, but I also would have lost even more and not had the chance to potentially win if we would end up in a CMP tie. So debatable on that action. Like that's like a pretty advanced calculation just to do on day one to determine what was going to be better. If he ends up shielding his Kingdra, I shield, I feint it down, then I just need to Skull Bash, and it's pretty much over. And a Victory Bell into Houndoom. So I looked up this matchup actually before we started battling, and I actually can win the 2-shield matchup. As you can see, these Razor Leaves are doing a ton of damage. But I decided to switch out into Lapras, which is a debatable move because he's going to be able to charge up energy super fast. He totally recognizes that. Anyway, so he switches into Lapras. Actually, maybe that was a later match. So I'm up 3-1 at this point in time. So you get the Skull Bash. And I really shouldn't have shielded here. The reason why I shouldn't have shielded is because I have so much health on, and he ends up like baiting me, so not great for me. I do land the Skull Bash, which is good for me. Gonna get the second shield, but his Lapras has a ton of health, and he's gonna Skull Bash me. And I potentially could have. I knew he was gonna try to switch in, and I don't know if I would have survived that foul play, but it ended up being like the really incorrect move on my part. So he ends up going with Kingdra, and I'm really desperate. What I should have done once I ended up in that CMP tie is I should have undercharged that Leaf Blade and then try to strategically farm down, which would have been, I probably could have did no damage, like no bubbles on Leaf Blade, and then farmed it down, and then that would have been potentially better. But I didn't, so we end up in this matchup, Victory Bell, and he goes into Houndoom, and again, I know I can survive a few of them, but this ended up being not good for me. So because he's going to charge up so quickly, I can tank a foul play, unlike Houndoom can't tank a Surf, and he's clearly at this point, I should identified is that he was clearly trying to QSA me, so I should have just kept doing ice shards and make him like overcharge. So anyways, he hits the foul play, and I'm very desperate to hit this, so I end up hitting the Surf, which is good for me, and he ends up not shielding, and he ends up going Kingdra, so I switch out into Victory Bell, and I built up a little bit of energy, so I'm going to go for the Leaf Blade. It's going to do quite a bit of damage to Kingdra, and the Kingdra is not able to get off a charge move, which is very good for me. And we end up in this matchup versus Lapras, and he ends up doing the charge move, and this is like when the delivery people were at my door, and I'm like, actually, I turn, I'm like, oh yeah, just leave it at the door. I turn around, I'm like, what the heck, my Lapras is on the field I'm like, I guess this is what I want to do. And then I winning the CMP, it didn't really matter, because if he ends up fainting me, which he does here, I guess if he knew he's gonna lose CMP, he should have just shielded. Then he would have been able to Skull Bash my Dragonair, but I still would have won. I would just be able to fade him down with a few Dragon Breaths. So end up winning that best of 7, 4-2, but really close and intense matches. Makes me at least consider Houndoom, especially with dark typing, double resisting Confusion. Going to really scare off any Venomoth, which is going to help. And then as well, make your opponent guess whether you're running Fire Fang or Snarl as your charge move. Running Snarl means that you don't have as positive a matchup against Victory Bell. As you saw, Victory Bell was doing a ton of damage with those Razor Leafs. I think it ends up winning the 2-shield matchup, but it's the case where it shields 2 of Houndoom's moves for one of its moves, which may not end up being a very favorable matchup for you, especially if they have Kingdra in the back and are able to just outrage basically anything in the meta. So anyways, I'm going to leave it there. If you guys want to see more timeless videos, and I'm going to include a link to C9Gotem's Twitter in the description. Let me know. Like, comment, and subscribe, do all that good stuff. And I'll see everyone in the next video.